This is Food for Thought with Deborah Walker. Today on Food for Thought, I have the lovely Denise Kelly with me, who's a nutritionist. She's from Harley Street. I trained with her, and she's great fun to have around. I have to say, she's absolutely gorgeous. Hi, Denise. How are you?
Hello, Debs. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Very happy to be on your show.
Perfect. So, Denise, on the website, I noticed you say that life is for thriving, not just surviving. Do you think that people are really just in a survival mode nowadays?
Yeah, I think loads of people are lacking in energy and they really want to know how to enhance their lives. It's just so busy. I think everything about life is just, hectic and busy, and people say they don't have time for things. But actually, what they really want to be doing is thriving. So that's kind of my motto for my business, is about helping people to kind of go from surviving to, properly thriving.
How would you know if basically you're not truly thriving with life?
I think frustration is a word I hear a lot and from other people, and basically they just feel like they're going round and round in circles, and that's either because they don't have the energy to get themselves out of, whatever situation they're in, or they don't have the focus. And I think if you're completely nutritionally okay, you do suddenly see the world a little bit clearer, and you're able to sort your life out, basically.
And you know about this, which is what's really nice from personal experience. So in effect, you've explained that how your nutrition has truly helped you through a very difficult patch. And I know from my experience as well that that's actually been the case. You get the right nutrition in place, then it strengthens your inner core in your mind, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And I think until you actually go through something that's quite life-changing yourself, it's very difficult to put yourself in, those shoes. But actually, when you have to dig really deep, in fact, it was funny, in the middle of my, I call it emotional crisis, or divorce, should I say, I ran the London Marathon, and I saw this huge sign. I wasn't in actually a very good place when I ran the marathon. I don't quite know how I managed to finish, but I saw this sign, and it just said, dig deep. And about half a mile later, it said, dig deeper. And another mile later, dig deeper. And I was just laughing so much. And actually, that's stuck in my mind ever since, because whatever situation you're in, you can always find a way out. And the knowledge that I had around nutrition helped me massively to get through a very difficult patch in my life. And what I want to do is to share that with everybody else, because I had to dig deep with all the knowledge that I've learned, sort of 8-9 years ago, and still learning, because I think when you're into nutrition, you never stop learning. But actually, it's been fantastic for me to really put everything I say into practice with my own health and my own challenges, and really sort of be standing here feeling in a very strong place right now.
And you really do live and breathe it, because if you look at Denise, she looks absolutely amazing. I don't say she's gorgeous for no reason. And so what do you have to do to live and breathe it to actually look as good as you do?
I'm not hugely extreme, and I do believe that everything in moderation is okay. I do have a really good life now, and I think happiness and emotions being, in a good place is very important. But I do the sort of fundamental things. I exercise every day. I surround myself with great people. I make sure that my family and I eat really, really well. And by eating well, what I mean is natural, organic, mostly raw foods, and we drink lots of water, and we just have everything in moderation. So if I am going to have a glass of bubbles or something like that, I don't get drunk anymore. I'll have a few glasses, I'll be happy, and that's it. But I still like to go out and socialise and party and do all of that, and it is possible. But I think when you know what you're doing with food, you can really play it to your advantage, and use it, if you're not feeling well, or if you feel like you're coming down with a cold or something like that, you can really up certain things to actually help you to get well much quicker. You can strengthen the mind, and obviously you can take lots and lots of superfoods and things to keep the body really strong, so that you can exercise lots as well. And I think exercise is one of the key benefits, obviously, for your endorphins and feeling happy.
Now, you've mentioned so many different aspects outside of nutrition there which actually make health up. And what you're saying there for me is that nutrition is only part of the equation.
Yes, absolutely. Nutrition can do so much, and it's obviously huge, but everything else, the way you think, how you feel, how you move, every single day is important to your well-being, and those aspects of things shouldn't be ignored. For example, I spent a lot of time obviously training for my marathon, only running and putting all good things into my body, but actually I needed to be stretching and doing meditation, so I started yoga, things like that. And I think everybody has to kind of look at their own lives and think, right, okay, what am I doing that's in balance, and what could I do to bring other areas of my life in balance, like the work-life balance. I do quite a lot of work with corporates, and I've recently come back from a trip to Lithuania, where I train CEOs of companies, and their work-life balance is completely and utterly out of sync. So we've been talking a lot about that, and how to sort of bring that back into balance with their families. And actually nutrition is helping them do that, because they're all cooking together, and it's really lovely to see the transformation and how people are a couple of months down the line from that initial training.
It's really fascinating, because obviously before I changed careers, I actually worked in HR, and the work-life balance was something I looked at then. I actually suffered from not having then, and then I've moved into this new arena and now see it from the other side, whilst I try and help people to either extract themselves or gain that life balance back, because we are completely out of balance with our working and our home lives, aren't we?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the more people that talk about it, the better it becomes, because there was a time, I don't know, even 10 years ago, where it was just work, work, work. And I think now, because, everybody knows somebody that's had cancer, everybody knows somebody that's got some illness or disease, one of another type. And I think that people are much more aware that if you don't look after yourself, then, you may come into trouble at some point. So it's very important to keep the balance. And because this is a conversation that many people have now, it's becoming more normal, and it's not classed as selfish or indulgent to look after yourself, because actually you've got to look after number one so that you can then look after everybody else that's around you. It's
really fascinating. You said about, cancer, that everybody knows someone now with cancer. Well, the stats are showing, aren't they, that basically 1 in every 2 people are going to potentially get cancer. Those are astonishing statistics. We have more people than ever with obesity and heart disease. We are a society that's fundamentally dying, from my perspective.
Yes.
And are killing themselves. And, work-life balance is part of that equation, as far as I can see, as well as the nutrition.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what, Debs, I could talk about this all day, because it's a point that does annoy me a little bit.
Good.
Because everywhere you go, if I'm on the train going to London, I live in Sussex, there's posters everywhere that, cancer's rise. And now, as you say, instead of 1 in 3, it's now 1 in 2. So every other person, they're saying, is going to get cancer. But it's just such negativity that it's putting into everyone's brains, and it's scaring everybody so much. And actually, instead of ploughing, I'm probably going to get shot down in flames for saying this, but instead of, sort of paying so much money, a shed load of money into, the drugs and trying to make people well once they've got the cancer, to me, spend the money on educating people on how to stay well, because if we know how to stay well, if we know how to eat well, and all the other things we've talked about today, then actually the problem won't be as rife as it is, and it isn't and shouldn't be as frightening as people perceive it.
It's really fascinating you talk about language there, because I agree with you. We're surrounded by negativity, and I don't have a television, so I don't see a lot of it. But what I was seeing this morning was the truck in front of me. Actually, it was a flatbed truck, so obviously it was a recovery truck, and in big letters on the back of the truck said crash. And I was looking at this being parked on the traffic behind it, thinking, no, I really don't want that to happen. And I felt like they were actually giving me an instruction. And then for me, I noticed this, and I started thinking, no, that's obviously not a want. But actually, I think that most people don't realise that we are surrounded by this absolute negative language, and it's almost the programming of people to go in a certain direction.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that it's very dangerous to, the tabloids, the headlines, the news, it's all quite depressing, really, and actually there's an amazing amount of fantastic people out there. There's an amazing amount of people who want to be well and healthy and who want to remain positive, and it's just about bringing that positivity up to the forefront instead of all the negativity, so that we can actually remain in a positive state all day, because at the end of the day, our reality is what we make it. And, if we make it good and healthy and wholesome and fun, then that's what our reality will be.
And the food definitely feeds into that. I'm just going to come up with some stats actually from a document that was recently released from the House of Commons on the influence of the pharmaceutical industry. And basically 7 billion every year is spent on medications.
Yeah.
So just to give people some indication, that's actually their own statistics that are coming out there. It's a huge, huge industry, that, but also it's one that, when you go into it, they're very clear about how long it's going to take for you to actually go through that process, aren't they? Because they will tell you are likely to survive this long or live this long.
Yeah.
It's almost the same language, isn't it, for programming people with?
I know, and you know what? I'm definitely not poo-pooing doctors. I have a doctor in my family, a consultant in my family, and, massive respect for everything they do. And yes, some drugs are amazing and they can help people massively, but it comes back down to the core of your health. And if we actually stop people from getting sick in the first place by education, then, we're going to save the NHS and everyone else a whole load of money. And the research, I think, needs to go sort of longer term. So at the moment, for example, cancer survivor rates are all over the sort of the 5-year period. Well, what happens after that?
Yes.
How do we know whether people are living 6 years, 10 years, whatever, and when you look at the stats for, I know we're not allowed to say that anyone cures cancer, but clinics that are really helping patients naturally with cancer, they will, for example, show it over a 10-year period, and, it's massive percentage of people that are living with cancer and living really healthy lives, and it's not affecting them at all, or they can eradicate the cancer or the aggressive disease, whatever it is they may have, within a very short amount of time. And it's this kind of positivity that I think we need to promote to give people hope, because hope is really, what it's all about when you're in that kind of, needing to survive phase.
Yes. Now, you talked about education there, and you run Fit Kidz, don't you, which is another side to your work. Tell us about that.
Yes, I started that about 5 years ago now, and I run a program where I go into schools and we just basically teach the children who are primary school age, so anything between 6 and 10, and we just teach them, the very basics of what they should be eating to get strong, so we make it fun. For example, we talk about spinach with, Popeye and big muscles and all the rest of it. And actually, at the end of the day, they help us to cook as well. We prepare lots of meals from scratch, so all the things that they love. So we'll do a fresh pasta sauce from scratch that they all help us to cook, and then we get them to have a smoothie. Now, it's really interesting because a lot of the parents, when I tell them what went into the smoothie, because we give them the recipes at the end of the day, the parents will kind of go, but my child won't eat kale, or my child won't eat spinach or whatever. But when it's all in the smoothie with a lovely, little bit of pineapple or some apple or some strawberries, the basis of that smoothie is vegetables, so your cucumbers, your celeries, and your greens, and a lemon. The kids love it, and all the parents are shocked. And the biggest buzz I can have, when I did one locally to me, that evening I went into a local supermarket and saw 3 of the parents in there with the children buying the ingredients that we talked about during the day, and they were ecstatic that their kids were drinking this concoction that they didn't think was ever going to be possible. So we just really go in to sort of educate the kids, and I think that this education, if it starts from very young, and those kids really hook into it and they really feel good for it, then hopefully that will carry on into their sort of teenage years and their adulthood, and just stay in their minds so that they know the right path.
It's an interesting point for me about what children will eat, because I have two different types of friends. So one type that's very, very alternative, and their children have gone to Steiner schools or they've been homeschooled, and they are surrounded by families that will eat together and do everything together to a certain extent and grow their own food. So those children are far broader in their eating of vegetables. And, I remember sitting next to one of my friend's children on the counter of the kitchen while she ate the nori sheets with mashed walnut inside them. Now, if you can imagine getting it, getting a child to eat a nori sheet, which is seaweed, for those who don't know, basically would have been completely unknown for my other set of friends who literally their children live on a very different, normal standard diet, let's call it like that. But the behaviours are very different. The thinking's very different as well that we tend to come across. I never really see any behavioural issues with this group of children. You see that they all tend to get on. They can all articulate themselves. They don't tend to get frustrated. You don't tend to see anger and frustration getting out of control. They just tend to, if they're not happy about something, articulate it quite clearly and then move on. And it is fascinating how food very clearly, but also the lifestyle has been absolutely fundamental to the education of those children and giving them good health. Yeah.
It is so interesting, and it's, you can see it all the time, and actually every single thing that we put in our mouth affects how we feel. They've done loads of studies, where they've sort of eaten certain fast foods for, 2-3 weeks, and they feel horrendous. Yeah. And it's the same thing for a child. And when you look at, girls, for example, and boys, who are all going through puberty much earlier than they ever should be. We've got kids in primary school who are sort of 8 and 9 that are starting their periods. And, you just think, okay, something is going on here which needs to be really addressed, because it affects everything about them. They're developing so much sooner, which affects their moods earlier, and it's much more difficult for them to handle. So we just, the better the child eats and the more organic food they can get, so whether that's, as you say, you're growing your own or from a local farmer's market or whatever that may be, just so important, and it does affect every single thing about the child. And actually, if the child is happy, it makes their childhood so much more pleasant and stress-free. And I sadly see quite a lot of kids with behavioural disorders and anxiety, panic attacks, things like that. And actually, that can be controlled in a really gentle way with food and superfoods. And when I talk about superfoods, I'm talking about things like spirulina and bee pollen and chlorella and those kind of real cleansing, mineral-enhancing superfoods that are very easy for kids and adults to take, and it just adds so much to the diet. But you're absolutely right. Everything that those children are taught to eat is how they're going to sort of continue. So it's important to get it right from the beginning, which is why we do the Fit Kidz program.
And you're talking about them getting to puberty earlier. Obviously, the changing hormonal levels. There's a number of factors for that, but ultimately, the question for me in my head is: are we leading those girls in particular to potential breast cancers in the long term by the fact that they've got that hormonal imbalance so early, and effectively they've achieved puberty earlier? Yeah,
we don't really know that yet.
Exactly.
There's a whole load of factors which are, very scary for our kids, the world they're growing up in. The amount of time they're on their phones, the amount of time they spend, at their laptops or with computers or whatever. And this is something that we, as children, I'm 43, we just didn't experience that. So it's a scary learning curve, for our children when they reach their 20s and 30s. But I still have that firm belief that, at whatever age you are, you can change every single cell in your body over a period of time. So however old you are, when you start to learn this stuff, whether you're 10, 15, 25, whatever, you can still make a massive difference quite quickly and hopefully protect yourselves well enough. But yeah, it's important. And that's why I'm really hot on education and teaching as many people as possible. A bit like your radio station, you can get out there and you can talk to a whole load of people, a wider audience. So the more people that hear it, the better. And I think we talked earlier, and it's, we want to spread the information. It's not about keeping it to yourself. It's about getting everybody to sort of know and be kind of energized by it and enthusiastic about it, because it's creating a better world. And, we need to make sure that our children are safe in the future.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing for me is that, you talked about energized about it, and you see so many people, as you were saying earlier, people, without the life balance, they're tired, they're absolutely exhausted, they're fatigued, and therefore they don't have the energy. And the biggest thing that people tend to say to me is, where do you get all your energy from?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to allow you to answer that, Denise, because where do you get all your energy from?
I get my energy, well, I'll talk about sort of when I was feeling very emotionally kind of crushed, and then the energy that I sort of got to get me through every day was really from, my day would start, for example, with hot water, piece of lemon, chunk of ginger, and a dash of cayenne pepper. That's instead of a coffee. And a lot of people say to me, I can't do without my coffee, but, you have your coffee, you're going to crash and burn an hour or two later. So that would be your kind of substitute coffee, and that sets you up for the day, really gives you an enzyme-enhancing drink before you start the day. And then juicing. And I know there's been tons of information in the press lately. There's a real debate going on whether juicing is good or not good. I firmly believe that juicing, because it is only the juice and you're getting rid of the fiber, your body doesn't take any energy to digest it. So it goes straight into your bloodstream, and it's a hit, like a medicine, really, of minerals and vitamins. So if you're juicing every morning, again, you're going to get that kind of natural high, which gives you that real clarity and focus. And that's really how I would start my day. And I'm still doing that every day now. And even though my energy is back on full force, I really wouldn't want to spend more than a couple of days if I'm away without doing that, because it really does give me that real light kind of feeling where you can just have exact focus and achieve your goals that day. And then obviously very light lunches, light evening meals, full of lovely raw foods, nut seeds, lovely dressings made from garlic and olive oil and things like that. And honestly, that's how I get my energy. But I'm also very lucky to live by the sea. So do lovely beach walks with my dog and my kids and my friends, and obviously all those lovely negative ions giving me that energy. And if you live near a park or the wood, trees, anything like that, just go and be out in nature, because again, I find that gives me a real lift. And even just walking on your own can be very therapeutic. There's so many ways you can get energy, but definitely the crux of it is going to be your food, because if you're having foods that are very heavy to digest, and, sort of create quite a lot of gloopiness in the blood, then you're going to feel heavy in your mood and heavy in yourself. So again, your creativity is going to be slightly stifled.
And we are truly creative beings. We're meant to have the energy, vitality and creativity. We're meant to have the flow of thinking, and we stifle it every single day by not starting our day, not living it in this way, don't we?
Absolutely, yeah. I do, yeah. And if people think about this, I love this concept, because at night time we are fasting. So, we're in our growth and repair phase all night long, healing, mending, getting everything how it should be for the next day. And the first thing you put in your mouth should be something that's going to keep you healing, really, if you like, and going to keep that repair going on. And that's why, a lot of people love fasting, and that's why, because they get this kind of energetic high. We don't need lots and lots of food. We just need the right food to make us feel in the right space.
I know that you'll love Denise as much as I do. Okay. I suggest you take a dose of Denise every single day. Denise, she's doing videos at the moment. They're on YouTube. I'll put a link into the box so that everybody can see her, because she's fantastic. She's fabulous. She's energizing. She's actually living the life fully. And that's what I really like about Denise. So Denise, how do people get in contact with you?
They can get in contact with me via my website, which is www.info@denisekelly.co.uk. Or if you subscribe to me on YouTube, I have no idea what the actual code is because it's really long. But if you just go into YouTube, you Google YouTube and you type in Denise Kelly Nutrition, then it will come up and you'll see lots of, I'm trying to do really, really simple tips every day that people can take on board and things that are very realistic to incorporate into lives, into busy lives, so that you can actually feel energized and much, much better every day. And, you can take whatever you like from these clips, but yeah, go on and have a look. And hopefully it will give you something that you don't already know, or at least if you do know it, a way to implement it into your lives every day. And that's the aim.
And it doesn't have to be complicated. I want to enter back into the interview at this point, but actually they are simple tips. And that's the thing about you living a natural life. It actually doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah. I think that's the same about life in general. I think a lot of people, myself included, life was very complicated. And actually when you take out the complications and you try and simplify everything, you feel clear in your head and you just feel much more able to do the right thing. And simplifying the way you eat is actually really, really easy. And being healthy is actually really achievable. And that's what I'm trying to get across in my YouTube videos. So hopefully make some difference.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Denise.
Thank you.